Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
12 minutes past 9, the African Perspective continues here on Channel Africa, this time through Africa World, our 60 minutes of the very latest news from the heart of Africa to the corners of the world. I am Tsepiso Makwetla. Thanks for joining us. Our top story, our recent protests from Malawi have been set to highlight violent attacks on peaceful protesters, with police reportedly failing to intervene. These events have sparked serious concerns about civil liberties and fairness of the upcoming general elections in September. To speak further about this, the implications for Malawi's democracy, we speak now to Idriss Ali Nassah, Senior Africa researcher at Human Rights Watch. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us, Idriss.
Thanks, Tsepiso, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Could you please just document for us these attacks on protesters and the nature that they have, or the character that they have taken on? Because it does seem to sound as though it's heavy-handedness by police for people who are voicing out their thoughts or concerns about processes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Malawi has been experiencing this troubling trend, since the last 2 years or so, where you have, people gathering to protest for one cause or another, and these protests are disrupted violently by unidentified men, sometimes, masked, hiding their identities, who disrupt these, beat up protesters, violently, disrupt the peaceful gatherings of civil society, opposition parties, civil servants as well. Last year in November, we had civil servants, protesting, and that protest was violently, disrupted by men carrying various sorts of weapons, beating civil servants up. And also we had another incident last year as well, where civil society members were gathering to pressure the Malawi Electoral Commission to open the voters' roll for inspection. Yet again, we had some unidentified thugs, most of them masked with weapons, disrupting this. Recently, last week on June 26th, we had a group of unidentified men also severely assaulting, violently disrupting a legal, peaceful protest that was called by a civil society organization that was calling for the Malawi, for an independent audit of the voters' roll.
And I don't know why actually I have this vision in my head. It reminds me of South Africa 1992 in the East Rand of Johannesburg, specifically Katoras, ahead of the elections, where, of course, men were recruited from the hostels, put into the Katoras community to literally take out male children or the men of the community. So the point I'm making is that it sounds like these are commissioned militia, and there have been allegations that these could be related to youth militia aligned to the MCP. How true have these allegations been proved to be, if investigated at all?
What is very troubling about all these protests, the last few years and last week's protest, is that the men who are responsible for violently assaulting peaceful protesters have done this in full view of the police, and there's been some very debilitating and unexplained apparent unwillingness by the police to intervene to stop these violence against unarmed peaceful protesters. And, to date, as far as we know, there's not been anyone who's been arrested, held to account for disrupting, beating up peaceful protesters. So this gives grave concerns about, number one, who is behind, the disruption, who stands to benefit from these disruptions. Secondly, why are the police not taking action and arresting these people? Because in last week's, disruption was a case in point where it was done in full view of the police. Members of the police were there, but they did not arrest anyone. So this raises concern to say, who stands to benefit from this disruption? And secondly, who is behind them? There have been allegations, and the main opposition party, the Democratic Progressive Party, has been alleging that these disruptors, these violent persons, are aligned to the ruling Malawi Congress Party youth militia, and the ruling party has denied these allegations that these are not people's from their youth militia. But the troubling question yet again is, why have the police not taken action against these disruptors?
And I believe journalists were saying that the police have not responded to their queries about why they appear to be willing bystanders when these human rights abuses occur, because they have an obligation to protect citizens who should enjoy freedom of expression of their rights.
And absolutely, and that is very troubling because domestic law, for example, the Malawi's own constitution, chapter 38 of it, guarantees the freedom to protest, the freedom to gather and protest with others. And Malawi is also a state party to various international and regional, conventions that could give rise to the right to peacefully protest, peacefully assembly, and then the state has a duty to facilitate the enjoyment of these rights, the enjoyment of the right to peaceful assembly, the right to peacefully protest. So the state has a duty and an obligation to facilitate its citizens to enjoy these rights. So there are articles that govern these rights, yet there is a clear dereliction of duty by the state, by the law enforcement agencies in Malawi, and that is actually troubling. And that gives a rise to us as Human Rights Watch to say, will the state be able to have infrastructure that will enhance its ability to conduct this September general election in a fair and impartial manner? So that is actually a very troubling instance. Yes.
So let's focus on some of those issues that have been raised by protesters at these demonstrations, particularly to do with the electoral process. And is there hope that there will be a free and fair environment to carry out the plebiscite?
So last week, for example, an organization calling itself Citizens for Credible Elections, was actually holding this protest simply because the Malawi Electoral Commission has refused to open the voters' roll to an independent audit. So that's really troubling, to anyone to say, if the Electoral Commission is not ready and willing to be held to account in terms of having a verifiable voters' roll, then that is problematic. So ahead of this election, Malawi has to show evidence that it is ready to meet its international, regional, and national obligations to allow people to vote and have an election that is credible, fair, and free from any insinuations of unfairness. So the credibility of this election, as far as we are concerned, will be measured against standards that are set out in the African Union's Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, as well as the Southern African Development Community's principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. So under these principles, right, member states, like Malawi is a member state, they are expected to observe and respect the full participation of citizens in the electoral process. So Malawi has to ensure that the full participation of its citizens in the electoral process, including access to the voters' roll, verifying the voters' roll. There also has to be freedom of expression and association. That has to be respected. There has to be political tolerance. There has to be independence of the judiciary, independence of the media, impartiality of the electoral institution. In this case, the Malawi Electoral Commission, impartiality of the law enforcement agencies. In this case, the Malawi Police and enforcement agencies.
Idriss Ali Nassah, Senior Africa Researcher at Human Rights Watch, speaking to us about the democratic environment in Malawi at the moment and the role of, or lack thereof, in the protection of citizens in Malawi. Brings the time to 22 minutes past 9.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Your weekday afternoons have been upgraded by The Upside with me, Tebohole Kuleni, and my partner in crime, Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
And if you want to find out all things luxury, fashion, travel, and arts and culture, this is exactly the place to be.
Prepare to be delighted. If it's hip, if it's happening, we are talking about it. We talk about what's now, what's next, and most importantly, what matters most on the African continent and the diaspora.
Do you know what time it is? Catch us every weekday on Channel Africa from 1 to 4 p.m. Central African Time.
Yeah, that's us every weekday afternoon.